If you had seen me that night, you wouldn't have noticed anything. I was laughing, relaxed, not worried about tomorrow, not knowing what tomorrow would take from me, because that was the last night. I have never felt young. My name is Gerald. I'm 65 years old, and I've spent a long time trying to understand what happened between that night and this morning, what changed, when it changed, whether I even had a say in it. I still don't have a clean answer. That's not me being modest. That's just the truth. It was a Friday. Late October, the kind of evening where the air is just cold enough that you notice it on your face when you step outside, but not so cold that you go back in for a coat. My brother-in-law had thrown a birthday party for his wife at their house out in the countryside. About 40 people. Music is playing somewhere in the kitchen. Good food. The kind of night you don't think twice about, because those nights felt endless back then. I was 43. And if you'd asked me that night, I would have told you everything was exactly where it should be. That's what makes it difficult to explain what happened next. I remember standing by the fireplace with a glass of wine, talking to a man whose name I don't remember anymore. Property prices, I think. Or maybe football. And I felt good. I felt like a man who was right in the middle of his life and knew it. Like I still had the second half ahead of me. I didn't know that was the feeling. I didn't know it had a name. I didn't know I was standing at the edge of something and not the center of it. 3 weeks later, I woke up one morning and my lower back had seized up completely. Couldn't get out of bed for 4 days. The doctor said it was nothing serious, just a muscular strain. Rest anti-inflammatories, back on your feet in a week. And physically, he was right. I was fine. But something else happened in those 4 days that I've never really talked about. Not to my wife, not to anyone. I was lying there, flat on my back, staring at the ceiling in the middle of the afternoon. Nothing to do, nowhere to be. No one needed anything from me urgently enough to pull me out of bed. And for the first time in probably 20 years, I was alone with my own thoughts. And what came up wasn't pleasant, not dark, not frightening, just uncomfortable in the way real things tend to be when you stop running from them. I started thinking about what I'd actually done with the previous 20 years, not in a summary way. Not the kind of answer you give at a dinner table when someone asks how life is going. I actually started pulling it apart. What I'd spent my time on, what I'd said yes to that I shouldn't have, what I'd been working toward, and whether I'd ever gotten there, whether I'd even known where there was. And I noticed something strange. I couldn't find a version of those years that I had consciously chosen. Not really. It felt more like I'd just been moving fast enough that I didn't have to choose. You just go, you respond, you show up, you take the promotion. You move to the bigger house because that's what the bigger salary is supposed to mean. You say yes to the holidays, the gatherings, the obligations, because the alternative is explaining yourself. And explaining yourself takes more energy than just going. I'd been living at a speed that made reflection feel like laziness. And when you live like that long enough, you stop noticing what you're missing. 4 days flat on my back, and I went further into my own life than I had in 20 years. I got better, got up, went back to work, and I want to be honest with you here, because this is the part people don't talk about. I didn't change anything, not immediately, not even slowly for a while. I went right back to the speed, back to the full diary, the long weeks, evenings dissolving into television and wine and the low hum of not quite resting, but something had cracked open. And once something cracks, it doesn't fully seal again. The years after that birthday party were the years I started watching myself from a slight distance. Nothing dramatic, no crisis, no breakdown, no moment of sitting in a car unable to go inside. Just this quiet, persistent awareness that I was living slightly sideways from what I actually wanted, like a car that pulls a little to the left. You can drive it fine. You just have to keep correcting. I turned 50, then 52. My father had a small stroke. He recovered, mostly, and I remember sitting with him in that hospital room, thinking about that night again, the fireplace, the conversation I can't remember, how good I felt. And I thought, he probably had a night like that too, a night he didn't know was the edge of something. When you're in it, you just think you're at a party. The real difficulty, and I want you to stay with me on this, is that there's no single morning when you understand you've crossed from one part of your life to another. There's no ceremony. Nobody hands you something. Nobody takes anything away. You're just 1 day older than you were, and then 1 decade older than you were, and the distance between the man at the fireplace and the man sitting here now is something you can't fully account for. I'm 65 now. I work less. My back still gives me trouble sometimes, though it's rarely as bad as that first time. I have 2 grandchildren. I see them on Saturdays when the drive isn't too much. I go to bed earlier than I ever thought I would, and I don't feel ashamed of that. Some things got better. I stopped pretending to enjoy things I didn't enjoy. That sounds small. It isn't. When you're in your 40s and you're good at performing ease, good at being pleasant, good at seeming fine, you don't notice the cost. When you stop, you understand how much energy it was taking. Some things didn't get better. I still think about the years I moved too fast. The conversations I should have had with my son before he became a grown man. The way I was present in a room, but not really present. My wife used to say I was somewhere else. Even when I was sitting right next to her, she wasn't wrong. I was planning the next week while she was trying to talk to me about the one we were in. You can't go back and be still in the moments you were restless. That's the one thing that doesn't have a fix. There's a thing that happens when you get to this age, and you're reasonably honest with yourself. You stop waiting for the version of your life that didn't happen, not all at once, but gradually, you stop holding that door open. The man you were going to be, the things you were going to have figured out. You let that door close, and then you find out what's actually here, what's actually in the room when you stop looking past it. And what's here is decent. I mean that plainly. It's not a consolation prize. It's quieter than I expected, smaller in some ways, larger in others. The things that matter to me now would have seemed small to the man at the fireplace. A long morning with nowhere to be. A meal that takes 2 hours to make, just so you can sit and talk about nothing. He wouldn't have understood any of that. He was moving too fast to see it. I still think about that night sometimes. Not with grief. More as you'd look at an old photograph of yourself and feel something that isn't quite nostalgia and isn't quite loss. Something in between. Recognition, maybe. You look at that younger face and you think, he had no idea. And then you realize, neither do you. That's the part no one tells you. You don't arrive somewhere and finally understand everything. You have just become someone who has stopped pretending to understand more than he does. And that, strangely, is the most settled I've ever felt.